Hello everybody, this is Chris Bird or MonkeyDude1313, and this is a completed master set of EX Power Keepers. That means this binder contains holos, non-holos, reverse holos, shiny energies, EXs, and the gold stars. Very excited to jump into it. A little bit of a history though. 2007 is when this set was released. It is almost 20 years old, and we were actually opening packs at the time. Unfortunately, I sold my collection at one point, and so now I needed to recollect this entire set. Another interesting thing is that 5 sets before this was EX Delta Species, which is the first set that had the Delta Pokemon, where Pokemon take on different types. We had 5 full sets where there were Delta Pokemon, including the set right before this one, Dragon Frontiers, which was only Delta Pokemon EX, and then they just decided not to put any Deltas in this set. So they stopped at the Deltas, and this was the last set of Gen 3. Feels a little bit funky. Feels like they should have just wrote it out until the end of Gen 3. But I digress. So we already see here on the first page, shiny gold fire energy. And that means that this set contains Charizards, and we have the Charizard binder. So let's quickly dive into that and pull those cards out. Going to our Dragonite First Edition French bookmark here, Dracolos. We see here we have a bunch of Gen 3 Charizards. Quick tour. National Stamped Charizard from Dragon, Secret Rare, Charizard EX from Fire Leaf Green, the 2 Deltas Species Charizards, the Charizard Gold Star Delta, but then the 2 Charizards that we're here for, the Power Keepers Charizard and Reverse. So first, let's look at the normal Charizard here. Nice and beautiful, got a little partial swirl under the wing there. Neat, neat, neat. And then the other Charizard is the Reverse Holo Charizard from Power Keepers. You can tell because it has gold text on its name. It has a different holo pattern, and it has the Power Keepers stamp there. So let's make sure we throw these into the binder as we get there. Starting off on page 1, let us throw in that Charizard, as he is card number 6 in the set, and this is what the first page of the set actually looks like. You'll notice that there are a bunch of very interesting Pokemon in here, mainly Gen 3 ones. They went back and did some of the starters again. They took some of the more fan-favorite Pokemon and some of the more stereotypical Gen 3 Pokemon and included them here. Aggron, one of my favorite Pokemon, and I got him with a nice swirl down here. Very, very nice card indeed. For these sets, they used the standard Cosmos Holo pattern. They didn't do anything fancy pants with these guys. Beautiful. Nice. Alright, so I'm going to pull out each of the holos here and we can take a nice little look. I don't really have all that many stories to go with these, but when we decided to get back into Pokemon collecting, back in Black and White Dark Explorers, that is when we went out and started picking a lot of these up. So we were picking up these holos for less than $1 usually. Some of the more expensive ones, like the Charizard, were higher than that, but about $1 or less for most of these holos. And the prices are quite a bit different now. I'll pull out the Charizard again, just because we're here, and for completion's sake. Beautiful, beautiful. Unfortunately, though, back at the time, we did not decide to buy the reverses. In fact, we didn't really mind one way or the other whether we were getting normal holos or reverses, so we ended up having to collect just about all of the reverses recently, which means pricey, pricey, especially since all of these stamps are worth so much more now than they used to be. But that's how it goes. You live and learn. And in this case, you learn to go back in time and buy Pokemon when it was cheaper. What a great lesson. Great lesson indeed. Alright, so for our first flip of the binder, we get over to page 2, and we see that we have a few more holos here. Let's pull out this Kabutops. Very, very nice. He's got a swirl right under his little hook arm there. Very nice. I don't know why I called it a hook. It's clearly a scythe. But moving on, Machamp here. Machamp holo got a nice fat swirl up there in the middle. And another beautiful card. Absolutely love this Machamp. Next up, Raichu. This is the only holo that we did not get from this set a long time ago. So this Raichu is in a little bit different condition than we normally would have, because when we go to card shows, we try to find cards that are in as good a condition as possible, but sometimes we will take ones that are not perfect. So this Raichu is definitely near mint minus in my opinion. Still a great card, but not perfectly near mint like a lot of these other ones are looking at. Alright, and then the last holo of the set, the Slaking. This Slaking looks way better than the one from EX Deoxys, who looks quite gross, honestly. He's in a much more action pose on that card, but he is also kind of gross. So I like this Slaking art quite a bit better. Okay, so quickly we will flip through the rest of the non-holos a little bit more quickly, but I will stop to point out some interesting ones. Part of the reason why I'm going to go quicker is that all of these card arts got repeated in the reverse holo section, which are much prettier to look at. So, first off, this Ninetales. Absolutely fantastic art. The most recent Ninetales before this was the Delta Species Ninetales from Dragon Frontiers, and then before that, Hidden Legends. Definitely recommend checking those arts out. Pichu, adorable. And you'll notice that a lot of these cards feature Ken Sugimori art, like this Zangoose down here, and they just kind of plastered him in the front and center, and then put a background behind it. I don't particularly dislike that. I know a lot of people aren't a huge fan, but what I really like about these Ken Sugimori arts with a background is that when you get into the reverse holo pattern from this set, they just look stunning. So keep some of these cards in mind and we'll pull them out in reverse when we get there. Alright, moving along, we see a little bit more about the starters up here, Charizard Blaziken, and we get to see a couple of Tomokazu Kamiya arts. This Metang is absolutely wild. Metang is usually a very kind of polygonal Pokemon, very straight edges. But in this case, Tomokazu Kamiya does what he always does and smushes things up. Similarly with this Aeron. What an interesting art for Aeron. Laying on the train tracks, presumably dreaming about eating them because Aeron eats metal. But again, another Pokemon that should be very rigid is now very kind of smushed and skewed and enjoyed being depicted in another way. Cool. We'll move on. Cute Pikachu up here. Got a Meditite training under a waterfall. And the reverse holo of this Poochyena is glorious. I'll pull that one out when we get there. Skitty and Slakoth, more Tomokazu Kamiya artworks. They're just so goofy. I love the arts from Tomokazu Kamiya. Alright, so here we're at the end of the Pokemon and the beginning of the trainers. Torchic, great. Spheal looks amazing in reverse. Pull that out when we get there. This set didn't need to add a bunch of trainers into the meta because it was the last set of the generation, and usually they pick a few sets throughout the entire generation to put in a bulk of their trainers. So there really aren't all that many, and many of these are reprints, as you can guess by Energy Switch and Great Ball. Alright, without further ado, the first of the grand reveals of the set is all of the EXs. These cards are glorious. So, we actually bought all of these a long time ago for very, very cheap, a couple of bucks each, except for this Absol. And since it's the first one on the list, I will pull it out. This Absol is quite pricey these days, but I absolutely love the Cosmos Holo on it. I love the way they've chosen to do the art, and everything's great about this. Interestingly enough, we picked this up from an East Bay card show from a vendor who said that they are a true Absol collector. And they didn't want to let this one go, but they were very happy to know that it is going to a collector who wants to collect every English Pokemon card in existence. So they were happy to be a little bit of a part of our journey to completing everything. Beautiful card. Moving on, this Claydol is a perfect example of how much we cared about condition back in the day. So we did care about condition, and we would choose a better condition copy of a card if we could, but there were some cards like this Claydol, whatever. So we took it in. It has a very nice swirl here, but this card was absolutely beat. It was dirty, it was creased, it had a lot of issues with it. So we cleaned it up a little bit, and now we have a pretty decent Claydol in our collection. However, we are definitely considering a condition upgrade for this guy. Alright, on to a series of 5 of the most minty mint Gen 3 EXs you'll ever see. We have this Flygon EX here. Absolutely glorious. And this is actually a Mitsuhiro Arita art, like that Charizard from base set that everyone knows about. So you get to see that he was experimenting with a lot of 3D modeling and 3D rendering art back at this time. I think one of his first cards that he did that way was Gengar EX from Fire Red Leaf Green. Next up, Ryo Ueda, Metagross EX. It looks absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, no swirl on this guy, but that is okay. Another fantastic card here. Alright, Salamence. Really pushing the limits of what constitutes a background, especially on a fancy card like this. This is pretty much just a sky. There's a little bit of color in there. You know, it's not completely blank, but, you know, it really complements the Cosmos Holo at least. So it really does look like he's flying through a starry sky, rather than just kind of hanging out. Also, the way they designed Salamence as a Pokemon, hard to make him look all that unique and interesting from art to art. So, quite nice here. Alrighty, next up we have Shiftry EX Dark type this time. since Shiftry is both grass and dark, they have played around a lot with both typings of these, both of these typings for him. So we got a dark type one here. Very, very cool. They also had a bunch of cards that either had double weaknesses or double resistances at this time, and I think it was one of the ways they were trying to balance weakness and resistance, because when you get Pokemon with really high health, the weakness starts to be kind of mandatory to exploit, or you need to have a deck powerful enough that you don't need it. And then at the beginning of Gen 4, with Diamond and Pearl base, they started doing a lot of weakness plus 20, for example, where if they were weak to you, you only did 20 more damage instead of double. But that did not last too long. Skarmory EX here, absolutely fantastic art. I really love that the background makes it look like he's coming down on you and coming to attack like a bird of prey, rather than just kind of hanging out, floating there. Absolutely beautiful art here. Alright, so I had said 5 cards in a row as the perfectly minty mint ones. This guy is not as mint, but that is okay. Walrein EX is a beautiful card here. Not all that much to say about this guy, just solid card all the way around. Okay, so one of the biggest, grandest reveals from this set is right here with the energies and the 3 gold stars from this set. Beautiful. Absolutely love it. No dead space here. So let's pull out each of the stars one at a time, and I can talk a little bit about them. So these guys still use the Cosmos Holo, and they even have a little bit of the Cosmos Holo up in that star there. Let's see if I can get the light to show it. There you go. Yeah, that star coming out there. We picked up this card about a month ago, I believe, and we got it for MP price. But I think this card is better than MP, so I'm not going to complain. Very, very happy about this guy. And I love that they chose to feature the evolutions as the stars at the very end of the EX era. I can't think of many more fitting ways after they had already gone through just about every legendary, including Pikachu and Gyarados. Next up, Jolteon Star. Unlike that Flareon, we picked this guy up maybe 6 or 7 months ago. We actually picked it up in a bundle deal along with the Vaporeon. So this Jolteon is in fantastic condition. We got quite a nice price on this, and very happy to have finally found some of the gold stars in raw. Basically, every gold star is graded these days, and I highly recommend if you have gold stars raw, you do the same. Also, do as I say, not as I do in this case. Obviously, I'm storing raw gold stars, but the reason we have not graded these is we are trying to do a raw collection here. So if we were to find some of these gold stars in like a 3, 4, 5, and we liked the look of them enough, we might crack them out, but that's how it goes. So this Vaporeon is beautiful as well. I really like the art on these guys, and I think overall this set of 3 stars is gorgeous. Interestingly, all of the star Pokemon from Gen 3 are supposed to be shiny variants of the Pokemon. And so we get the red Gyarados, which also fits because he's Delta Species type Fire. For example, we get the black Rayquaza, we get the black Charizard. These guys look very similar between their normal and shiny variants. So if you don't believe me, go look it up. But Jolteon's a little bit more yellow than this, and he's a little bit greenish here. Vaporeon is more blue than purple, but still pretty close. And Flareon is, Flareon got a little bit less toasted. So very interesting that the shinies don't actually change all that much with these guys. Okay, so these energies were part of the set, and you could pull them out of packs. So that's why I included energies, even though we don't normally include energies in them. So these are all set numbered energies, and I'll only pull out one here, the fire type. Obviously, my favorite type will do that. But you can see that they have kind of a rainbow mirror effect on this guy, and it really lights up the card very, very well. Back in the day, when I would seriously play the TCG, I liked the idea of blinging out my deck. And so luckily, I bought 4, or I guess 3, of the No Hat Lilies from Ultra Prism for like $50 each, and now they're worth $500. Either way, I bought, I think, 10 or 11 of each of these energies to play in decks at the time. So we have a ton of these laying around, and we will get around to trading them as we do. But that's the end of the main set. Let's get into reverses. And same with the first page, we have another reverse Charizard to put in here. So let's pull out the fire energy. We'll stick that Charizard in that we pulled out earlier, and we'll be happy with the page being done. Something I quickly wanted to point out is this is a great example of the Ken Sugimori art and the way that it interacts with the background holo on reverses. So They highlighted the Kensugimori art itself by giving it kind of a white glow, and then the holo pattern really shines well. So since this white glow and the moon up there in the corner really fit well together, the reverse holo on this card is just gorgeous, despite it being very normal Kensugimori art. So it may come off a little bit in this video that I don't like Kensugimori art. That is completely incorrect. I love the art style, but since you're using the same image from card to card, it makes it more difficult for it to feel like a cohesive unit, if that makes sense. You know, you're putting a background behind a pre-made image. But in this case, I think they did a fantastic job. All right, so the reverses. A glorious sight to behold in this set. Every single card has the Power Keepers stamp in the corner, and I will pull out a few as we flip through. But let's make sure they're all there. Make sure we have all of the cards. Reverse Raichu, quite nice. This one was one of the hardest ones for us to find. Reverse Pichu, Wolf Den really hooked us up with this one. Very happy we got that one here. Here's the Ninetales I said I wanted to pull out earlier, because the holo pattern on this really is beautiful. Having the rainbow in between the tails, absolutely glorious art here. Wow, wow, wow. All right, I could gush about these cards all day, but I will choose to only do it for about 20 minutes here. All right, here's another example of that Kensugimori art being really lit up well by the reverse holo. Not only did they have the white faded outline, but also the rainbow pattern now, and Sableye looks absolutely gorgeous. Alrighty, so let's flip through the reverses a little bit more, shall we? Some very interesting arts. I really like this specific Charmeleon art because of the big swipe. You know, usually they have Charmeleon either just kind of standing there or doing something with fire, and in this case they decided to make him more of a physical attacker. Quite nice, quite nice. I pointed out the Tomokazu Kamiyas earlier. I pointed out the Kensugimori art that they work with, so let's keep on going. This page, even though these are commons, the page is still so beautiful. Absolutely love it. This Charmander I have kept in my collection for a very long time. Very happy to have held on to that, as he's not a cheap boy anymore. And let's pull out this Metatite, because this Metatite is a great example of the background really popping when you have the holo pattern on the card. So Metatite here is sitting under a waterfall, doing, I suppose, resistance training, you know, training yourself to be stronger and more resilient, and the holo pattern on the card really makes that water pop out of the card. Plus, it also makes it a lot easier to see this waterfall in the background. Very nice use of reverse holo there. And I'll pull out the Poochyena, like I had mentioned earlier as well. I think this is one of the best Poochyena arts they've ever made. Absolutely adore this art. And to the point where every time I see it at a card show, I will pause and take a nice long look at it. Absolutely adorable for a Pokemon that's usually kind of rough and rowdy. He's now being just very cute and maybe a little bit mischievous here. All right, next up, I'll pull out this Skitty, another great example of the reverse holo really helping out the card there. This Skitty looks like it's just kind of hanging on to some bamboo shoots, and we got the reverse holo pattern there. This Slakoth reverse was the very last card we needed to complete the set. It took a long time to find him, and so we were sitting on all these other beautiful cards for a long time, waiting for this Slakoth to appear. But we found him, and we're good now. All right, I'm not going to pull out Pikachu. Pikachu, great art here, but Pikachu gets a lot of attention here. And now we are on to the last page. Spheal, one of my favorite Pokemon as well. I'll pull him out. Again, the background, the holo does a great job at pulling out the background in this art. Very beautiful. And the last one I'm going to pull out from this binder is this Torchic. Torchic gets so much amazing art, but what I really like about this one is how Mitsuhiro Arita really pulled his original style back out and did a great job on this card. So instead of doing the 3D rendering like he was practicing at the time, he just went to normal drawing on this one. At least that's what it looks like to me. So absolutely wonderful card there. And again, the background really helps with the holo. Okay, so let's make sure we have the whole set. We flip to the last page, and we see that since there are no longer EXs and stars and holo energies to throw in, the set no longer ends at a perfect divisible by 18. It now ends one more than that. So we actually have 17 slots in this page filled with basic energies. That is a master set of EX Power Keepers. An absolutely glorious set, one of my favorite sets from Gen 3, and I'm so happy to be able to share it with you right now. What sets do you guys want to see next? Do you want to see more master sets? Do you want to see more almost completed master sets? We're like 5 cards away from 10 different sets right now. Or do you have a specific card or type of card or anything you'd like to see featured on a Featured Friday? So if you're the biggest Absol fan and you want to see every Absol in existence, we probably got you covered. We might be missing 1 or 2 here and there, but we probably got you covered. So leave a comment down below if you want to see a specific type of card, a specific set, a specific anything featured on this channel. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.